So I like to start by asking my guests what is your story, how you got into programming, how did you start programming, and why? What made it so interesting for you?
I didn't actually know that programming was fun. I thought programming was boring. But looking at it from the outside, it looked like it was very complicated and things like that. I was really into math. I really liked math a lot. Basically, since I was a kid, so it was my favorite subject. And so when I started at university, I was basically thinking I was going to be studying math. And maybe do some languages on the side because I was excited about languages as well. And after taking, I think, one semester of math, I wasn't that excited about it anymore for some reason. Um, and and my mother, actually, she was working at the university, and she said there's this course. It's called symbolic programming, and it seems to be like something about languages and something. And so maybe you should go try that out. Maybe that is like the intersection of languages and math, and that will, resonate with you. And so I took this symbolic programming course, and it was in Scheme, so it was a Lisp dialect, so it was a functional programming, and this was basically like the infancy of natural language processing. So it was a lot about using Lisp-like languages to analyze natural languages. And my first assignment was like super silly. I think it was like adding two numbers together without actually using like a plus operator, but having to do it yourself. And I found it absolutely super fascinating. Like, I thought it was so much fun. I just went above and beyond anything in the assignment. And my teacher's assistant that was going to correct my assignment, she sent it. She sent me an email after I sent it in. She said, "Patricia, okay, just wait until next week, and we'll teach you looping constructs," because I was just copy pasting things, and I was like, "This is amazing." So basically, I fell in love with it the way I had with math before. That it was like everything I loved about math, just better. And at the end, you had a thing that did something. It's like before I would reach an answer and I could, say, this is the answer, I've done the math. But now the answer, which was the program, it actually did something. And that I thought was super exciting. So I switched to computer science. I took every single programming course that they had at the university. um, and I haven't looked back since. I still love programming.
So you started with Scheme, but then you switched to C++ at some point.
Oh yeah, now we didn't have C++ at the university. But we had a bunch of different languages, and we had some C. We had an operating systems course and low level programming. But while I was at university, my favorite browser was Opera, and we had it running on the Solaris machines that we had at the university, because this was way back when, in the beginning of time. Um, and and I really loved Opera. It became like my favorite browser. At the time, there wasn't a lot. This was back in the early 2000s. There weren't a lot of browsers to choose from, and I really liked Opera a lot. And it was also a Norwegian company, so I was like, when I finished university, when I finished my master's, I want to go work at Opera. And so I applied there, and they sent me a programming test in C++. I did it as best as I could. I sent it back in. They called me in for an interview, and sitting at the interview, one of the guys that were interviewing me said, "So, Patricia, you know C++?" And I said, "No." It's like the first and only C++ program I've written in my entire life, I sent to you as your programming test. And they were like, and they just kind of all looked at each other and go like, what do you know? And I was like, well, I know Java, I know some C, And they kind of looked at each other and go like, yeah, yeah, that will work. It was so basically they hired me with my little C experience and some Java experience, and just threw me in at the deep end, giving me a CVS password and say go make things. And it was a harsh learning curve. It was I made all the mistakes, all of them. It was a pretty painful first 6 months, but they didn't fire me, so I was happy. And I was surrounded by super smart people who knew a lot of things, and so basically I just spent the entire time learning as much as I could. So it was really fun.
So the general wisdom is that math is closer to functional programming than it is to whatever C++ is now, which is a mesh of every programming paradigm
Yes.
that exists. Um, so was it easier for you to get, or was functional programming closer to what you are used to than when you had to learn C++? Did you have to switch your mindset a bit to understand the language?
My biggest switch was when I went from, because I did like 3 classes in symbolic programming, so I was basically programming only functionally, and then when I switched to computer science, their main language was Java, so I had to switch from Scheme Lisp basically to Java, and that was a big change, very different programming paradigm, and I remember like at the end of like my first like my course in Java, there was a question like, how would you solve this problem? And the professor said, I know it's out of scope for this course, but and I just like, so I put up my hand and I was like, I don't know if you people have recursion in Java, but I would solve it with recursion. so so that's basically when I had to do the mind shift. But it was the thing that made me want to go and program more in imperative languages was because I wanted to make stuff. And I looked around and nothing was made from Lisp. Like there, it's like I wanted to make things that people used. I wanted to make programs that had value in the real world for people, and I didn't see much example of doing that purely functionally. And so then I was like, okay, then I will learn the programming languages that I need to make the stuff that I want to make. And so I basically, I think by the time I was finished at university, I had programmed in probably 10 or 15 different languages.
Wow. Yeah, well, that sounds really cool, and it's actually quite unique because most of the people we talk with and most programmers have started with imperative languages and then try to very hard to understand how functional programming works. And I think you
Yeah.
are one of the few people, well, the only one I know who started with functional programming and went the other way. It's
Oh, yeah. No, it was